Lady Charmaine, and my guest today went from being a stand-up comedian to radio personality and now television actor. He will be making his acting debut on the new TBS original sitcom, Sullivan Sons. I want you to help me welcome Mr. Roy Wood Jr. to the show. How you doing, Roy? Welcome to the show. Oh, you want some
you
real
gotta be quiet while my crowd going wild.
Okay, well, we got a real one.
Thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate it. You know, y'all normally ain't kind of Southern folk out on the West Coast.
Of course,
you
we're
know,
always kind.
y'all West Coast people. You know, y'all like to get all arrogant with your guacamole and your fish tacos, and try and tell us how to eat.
Oh, you wrong for real? Because where you from, Birmingham?
Yeah, I'm from Birmingham. You know what's funny? I tried to explain that to people back down south. I'm like, yeah, man, they got fish tacos, shrimp tacos. They looked at me like I was just making something up. I tried to explain it to my uncle. My uncle is old school Mississippi. Like, he's just old school Mississippi. Like, he eat pig feet sandwiches with the bone hanging out the side of the sandwich. And I go, yeah, they got fish tacos, Unc. Why would you do that? Why would you do that to a fish?
Really?
Why would you do that?
Okay, well, we're going to pray for your uncle, and I'm going to talk to you. I want to talk to you about your new television show, Sullivan Sons, and tell us about the show and tell us about your character.
The character I play on the show is aptly named Roy. The gist of Sullivan Sons is this. Comedian Steve Byrne is the star of the show, and he moves back home to Pittsburgh to take over his parents' bar. And if you ever go out and hang out, even if you're not at a bar drinking alcohol, you hang out at the local restaurant or wherever you socialize with your friends, the bar kind of serves as the town hall. Like if you think of when you used to watch Martin, when Martin was on, how they would all hang out at Nipsey's and shoot pool and relax and all the silly things that come about from hanging out like that with all of your friends. That's pretty much the gist of the show. And I play one of Steve's best friends, one of his old buddies from back in the day. And I come down there trying to sort out my problems.
Okay. And what problems do you have on the show?
Well, you know, the main problem that my character seems to have, my character, for a living, now how stupid is this? He runs a VHS rental store. Who in the world is still renting VCR tapes? Not buying VCR tapes, renting them.
Is that why you in the bar all the time? No customers?
There you go, because I can't get no business. Because everybody at Redbox, everybody streaming Netflix and Hulu. But I run a VHS rental store.
Okay, that's why you in there every day. But I have to ask you this question because you have a unique journey. You became a comedian, radio personality, and now actor. I want to kind of go along your journey a little bit. How did you become a comedian? What was your interest in, and who did you admire growing up to make you want to go into that field?
My comedic influences were Chris Rock and George Carlin, primarily. Those two guys always were like great observationists and analysts of the world. You don't really know a lot about them in their private life, but you definitely see the world differently after you listen to them. My path with comedy, I started out at Florida A&M University down in Tallahassee, and part of the curriculum for journalism is that you take a public speaking class. So one of the assignments one month was just impromptu speeches. Every day the teacher gave us a topic. We had 10 minutes to come up with it. And I would go up in front of the class, and they would laugh. And some of it wasn't on purpose, and I flunked the class. But what I got out of it was that feeling of satisfaction from saying something, sharing a thought, and seeing people laugh. And that was that. If comedy's a drug, that was my first hit. And from then on, I became curious about stand-up. I did the reading up on it and everything. And, I used to go up the street to Florida State, and I started hosting shows over there. And it just snowballed into the career that it is today. That was 1998.
Wow, so that wasn't that long ago. That was only 14 years ago.
Yeah, and, it was a blessing because when I got my degree in broadcast, when I got back home to Birmingham, I was able to intern at a local radio station doing what I thought was going to be hard news, but it ended up turning into me being the comedian on the show. And apparently with my voice, nobody believes hard news because I guess I'm too loud and I sound too crazy. To deliver television news, you must sound astute and enunciate, and you must be very proper in your delivery and execution. And nobody's going to believe me when I'm doing, all right, y'all, the weather's going to be 83. It's going to be a high 92 tomorrow, and there's going to be a cold front coming through. In other news, 2 dudes got shot. Police looking for them. Got information, called Crime Stoppers. It just doesn't.
Wasn't believable. Right.
Yeah, it wasn't believable. So that's kind of how I fell into radio while doing comedy at the same time.
So do you still have your morning show?
Yes, I do. I've been blessed enough to, to work with a company that's, been extremely flexible with my travel schedule with the production of the sitcom. So I've been able to do the show from California while we tape and, do it on a satellite box and everything. And, just working hard. Early mornings, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm up, I do my show, I get to set, I do everything I need to do there, and then I go sit in the corner and try and relax for a minute.
Wow, that is great, though. So, just watching your career in the 14 years and seeing that passion being birthed in the classroom to where you are today. Now, your series is executive produced by Vince Vaughn. What is it like working with him?
Vince Vaughn is a downright pleasure, and I'm very leery of Hollywood stars in terms of interacting with them. And I knew going into this, Vince Vaughn was my boss. He wasn't there in the audition room for the selection process of all of the actors. But once we got on set and everybody did their introductions, he was right there, hands on, shaking hands, giving notes. Like a lot of like when you think executively produced, a lot of people are just putting their name on it to help push the project, and they're getting a cut of the profits, or they're not really micromanaging the project the way it needs to be done. But Vince Vaughn is a perfectionist like you would not believe. He's working long hours to help this show do well. He has a show coming out. He has a movie coming out this month with Ben Stiller, and he's already in production on another movie with Adam Sandler. You have 2 projects of your own, and you're still on set watching a black guy deliver a couple of lines about a VHS store.
Well,
that level of detail says a lot about how seriously he takes his job, and it's definitely something I took away from the set with me.
And his dedication as well. You could see that because he really wants this to really be successful. How did you hear about this role, and where is the show shot? Is it shot in New York?
No, the show is actually shot in California, in Burbank, at Warner Brothers Studios.
Okay.
We shoot on the same lot with Ellen DeGeneres, Conan O'Brien. A number of CBS and NBC sitcoms are all on the lot, so you see a lot of interesting characters, to say the least, walking around the lot. But it's set in Pittsburgh, so it has a really great Middle America vibe, which is what I'm most thrilled about, because a project like this doesn't come along often. Most sitcoms are set, either New York or L.A. or the big city, and that's usually the direction they want to go. Even the reality shows that we love are shot in more major, or set in more major markets. For me, it was a blessing because, Steve Byrne is a comedian, and I've seen him a couple of times, and, we've worked, together on, some stand-up shows. And I guess my name came up when they started doing the casting process back in 2011. And they brought me in to audition, and, I probably auditioned 3 or 4 times, and no way was anything given to me. That's for darn sure, because I saw some stars in that room that I was going up against. It's very demoralizing because, and that's why I feel so blessed to be a part of this. There's not a lot of black roles in television of any kind, of any sort. So when you're going out for an audition for a specifically black part, the competition is stiff, man. And there was plenty of people in that lobby that I was auditioning against who are currently in movies that are on my iPod.
Wow.
So, you're going up against very experienced people, and, a lot of people that are, to be respected. So if you're lucky enough to land something like this, then it's to be taken seriously. I didn't do stand-up the entire 3 months that we were on set producing this, because I wanted to make sure that I did a good job and that I delivered and that I did my part. To me, that's the hard part about acting that I'm having to get used to, because with comedy, you control everything from creation to from preparation to delivery. But with acting, it's like being a solo singer. Comedy, you're doing a solo act, but acting, you're in a group. So if you're doing a solo, If you're doing a solo by yourself, that's easier to execute. But if you're singing with the entire church choir, the altos have to be on point, the tenors have to be on point, the sopranos have to be on point. But all you can do is do your job as a tenor and hope that the altos and sopranos take it as seriously as you do. And in this case, I think we have that.
Wow. Now, were you living in Birmingham when you auditioned for this part, or were you living in Los Angeles and you got an agent, or did they just throw your name up there with no agent and you got the role?
No, I've already had an agent. I moved to L.A. in '07, so I was already auditioning around town for different stuff. And that's the other thing I think a lot of people don't realize is that when you audition and you don't get a role, it doesn't necessarily mean you suck. It just means you may not have been right for that character.
Right.
So if that's the case, the people remember you. So when 2010 came, I was spending more time. I still had Los Angeles residency, but I was spending more time in Birmingham in 2011 because of the radio show. So instead of being in LA 3 weeks out of the month, I was only in LA maybe a week out of the month doing shows and auditioning. So when I got the call to audition for Sullivan Sons, I was spending way more time in Birmingham. But by the time we shot the pilot last November, and then when the pilot was officially picked up by the network in December, I hightailed it right back to California.
So what is it like to know that you're going to be auditioning for a pilot, and then you guys get the word that the network has picked it up? What was your reaction when you found that out?
That's Christmas. I mean, it's a feeling that's higher. It's a higher feeling than knowing that you got the part, because hundreds of pilots are shot every year in Los Angeles.
Right.
Hundreds by every network. And Comedy Central alone, from what I've been told, shoots anywhere from 30 to 50 television shows, and they may only pick up 4 or 5 of them. So when you look at that type of ratio and the odds that you're up against, to be called and told that the network cares enough about the product, and you go, all right, I'm singing with a good church choir right here.
Okay.
So, it's not only, getting the part validates you as an actor to a degree, but the show getting picked up validates you all as an ensemble. And I think from that point, all you can do at that point is just pray that people like the product that you're putting out.
See, the one thing I can say about like your show, Sullivan and Son, although I have not seen it yet, it's along the lines of the TV show Cheers. And it's amazing how you can have an ensemble cast with so many characters, but then you can have some standout characters that can actually launch their own show, like Frasier launched from Cheers. And it's amazing how you can have a character but don't even realize your character, if you make that character your own, can be a standout character that can even launch your career even further just from having a few lines. I don't know how big your role is. I know you're a co-star, but it's amazing if you do it right and if the people love you, how you can launch and have your own show where this can be a true stepping stone.
Yeah, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But for me, my path with comedy and my belief, I guess the one thing that I've always trusted and had faith in is just hard work, plain and simple. If you work hard, it is inevitable that it will lead to something rewarding. It may not always be what you think or what you expect, but it will always lead somewhere for you, and you have to stick to that, and you have to believe that. So even if that doesn't do that for me on this show, I still believe that being a part of this project and doing well will lead to something else. It is preparing me for something else. Everything you do prepares you.
And I like how you said hard work, because you never know who's watching you. And it was a blessing that your name came up. I know somebody's good for this role. Now, if you were that brother that was real nasty, real ugly, really mean, you probably would not have been recommended at all. But it's it's great that people liked you and that you left an impression on the individual that highly recommended you. What advice would you give to a young and up and coming comedian that want to, go the comedic route and then go into television and movies? What advice would you give them?
I think the first thing young comedians, or I don't like to say young, I just say new, because it paints the belief that if you're of a certain age, you can't start chasing your own happiness and fulfillment.
Okay.
New comedians, the first thing you have to understand, Chris Rock said a very powerful quote some years ago where he said, everything that I do is to bring more people to my comedy. So every movie that he's ever done, every program he's hosted, it's just been to expose himself to newer people and broaden his horizons. And if you look at consistently what Chris has done, it's consistent with that model. So I think you have to identify some level of an end game, even at your amateur level, you don't even know how to write a joke yet, because that's going to dictate some of the choices that you need to make as you go on throughout your career. So number one, identify your end game, but more importantly, write. Be true to yourself. Don't do stuff that's just, do what you feel is funny, not what you think people will laugh at.
That's a good point.
You can't sell out to just what people want. People are fickle. They change all the time. But your thought process and your feelings are going to be the one constant throughout your entire career as everything else changes around you. There was one more thing that I was... do comedy outside of your region and record yourself often. Record yourself, critique yourself. Football players watch game tape after a big game to see where they can improve. Comedy is the exact same way. And the more comedy you can do out of town in different regions, the better off you are. If you're only doing comedy where you live, it's like practicing sports against the same team over and over again and saying you're the champion. How are you the champion? And you keep playing the city of Sacramento over and over again. Go down to Fresno. Go over to San Francisco. Go down to L.A. Go up to Portland. It's going to make you more well-rounded, and it's going to make you more balanced as a whole, and that's what you're going to need down the road. It's very difficult to become a great comic where you are, then learn the concept of exposing yourself to different environments. I've seen comedians from big regions who never leave for years, and then you drop them on a stage in St. Louis, and they may as well be talking in Spanish to the crowd.
Wow.
So working that muscle concurrently as you learn the craft of stand-up comedy, I think is one of the biggest favors you could do yourself. And if you're fortunate enough to have a career that lasts 7 to 10 years, which is where I think the breaking point is for most comedians, once you get into that 7 to 10 year range and you're still doing it, you're going to be appreciative of what you did in years 1 through 5.
That was
go around
good advice.
As much as you can.
That was really good. Go ahead.
I was never able, I had no choice because, coming up down south, you only have one comedy club per city, and open mic is usually once a month. So if you're trying to work in the South, every week you're driving, every night you're driving. So you had no choice but to work. Basically, I worked everywhere from probably New Orleans all the way over to Raleigh-Durham. My first 3 years of comedy. New Orleans to Raleigh-Durham down to Orlando. That was kind of the zone that I kind of prowled. And, as you get better, you get to work better rooms. But the important thing early on is stage time and critiquing yourself.
Really good points. Thank you so much for sharing those points. And speaking of going to different cities, and you mentioned San Francisco, and earlier you also mentioned how well the cast get along. I want to talk about the Sullivan Sons tour before we go. Tell us, how did that whole idea of a tour for Sullivan & Son to come with the cast members?
I mean, it was a natural progression. Myself, I'm a comedian. Steve Byrne is a comedian, and also two other co-stars on the show, Owen Benjamin and Ahmed, are also stand-ups themselves. So we were like, well, you know what? There's 4 of us, and there hasn't been a tour attached to a television show in a while. Maybe we should do a television show. Maybe we should do a tour around the show. I was like, you know what? Yeah. let's go do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's simple.
Bam,
okay.
Let's go. Yeah, let's go do. Let's call a comedy club. It was one of those flowing thoughts. Like, we should. You know what? Yeah. Let's go.
It started to sink in. And so I know you're going to be hitting San Francisco on July. I believe it's going to be July 31st in San Francisco at Cobb's Comedy Club. So you'll be here locally in Northern California.
Yes, ma'am. And if they can't catch me there, then I'm sure I'll be back somewhere in that area in the next couple of weeks.
Fantastic.
So we'll go from there.
Thank you. And I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. And I want to remind everyone to make sure they watch the premiere of Sullivan Sons airing Thursday night, July 19th, tomorrow night. And it's going to be back-to-back episodes. You do not want to miss it. So check your TBS channel airing at 10 p.m. Before we go, what's your website so people can go and look you up and see where you're going to be?
The website is roywoodjr.com, roywoodjr.com. If they just go and Google Roy Prank Calls, my website's the first thing to pop up.
Fantastic. Again, thank you so much, Roy, and congratulations on your new role. And we know many things are going to come because you work hard and you trust the Lord. So thank you again.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.